All right. So why don't we kick this off? Again, thank you for joining our live demo today. A couple of logistics before we kick it off. My name is Toby Beck. I'm our Director of Product Marketing and Growth, and I'm also joined by Michael Perisu, who's going to do the demo itself for us in a little bit. In terms of setup, I'm gonna do like a quick kind of, 5-minute intro, just to set the scene, what we're kind of doing here at Promethium and what we're working on, and then I'm gonna hand it off to Michael, who's gonna take you guys through the product itself. And then at the end, we'll have some time for a Q&A. So if you have any questions along the way, please just feel free to use that Q&A button in your kind of Zoom um, itself and just chat in any questions to us, and then we'll just get to them live after we're done with the demo. So without further ado, let me kick it off. Like I said, I want to keep this pretty brief, but just to set the scene a little bit, obviously with AI, there's this whole promise of, you can just get a question to any kind of answers. And obviously, we would want the same for our enterprise data, so that we can just go out, anybody basically can ask any question and get kind of a trusted answer that is grounded in our business reality. And as a result, I mean, we've seen, a lot of these agents and conversational interfaces popping up left and right. Basically, any data platform, whether it's Snowflake or Databricks or Microsoft, has an agent. Any catalog or BI tool, they have their own conversational interfaces at this point, but also your applications itself. And obviously, there's a bunch of, just the general LLM providers um, that also have their tools and that you can use. But the reality is, that each of these agents has only an access to a sliver of your data and a sliver of your context. And what ends up happening is that if you ask kind of if you test this in reality, right, in like an enterprise setting where somebody asks an open-ended question against data that might not be perfectly curated and all in the same spot, accuracy degrades pretty sharply. So the stat you see here is kind of a general um, evaluation framework and a benchmark, but we're seeing that across the board, these types of questions get correct answers in less than 20% of cases. And so why is that the case? Um, we call it the great AI disconnect, but a lot of these um, kind of reasons are neither new nor are they really trivial. It's a fact that in most enterprises, data is distributed. It sits in various places, and especially if you want to if you want to answer questions that haven't asked before, at this point, it usually means that you have to stitch together data from various sources because all the low-hanging fruits have already been solved. Um, the second piece is that similarly, your context, your metadata, is equally fragmented. Part of it might live in your data sources, like your schemas and tables and column names. Part of it might live in catalogs or semantic layers or your BI tools, to kind of connect, business meaning with the data on the back end. But in a lot of cases, it might also just sit in your people's heads and might not even be codified. And then lastly, in 2025, users expect immediacy and results to come fast, right? So if there's a new question, you can't waste weeks or months to build a new custom pipeline, get the data curated before you can then use it. Um, this problem is what we're at Promethium are trying to solve. And our AI Insights Fabric is basically kind of that middleware that is able to connect all these things. So bring in all the data from your various data sources, bringing all the context from around your enterprise, and then being able to surface that wherever your user need it. Maybe in our conversational interface, maybe in some other, business tool, maybe through your BI tool, whatever that may be. And if we double click on Promethium, There's kind of three layers that are purpose-built to address these challenges I was just talking about. Our universal query engine is all about making your data discoverable and accessible regardless of where it lives. The context hub is all about accuracy. So bringing in that wealth of technical and business context that might already exist around your organization and kind of unifying that to give you accurate results, as well as being able to codify and capture some of that tribal knowledge that might exist in people's heads, but not in any documentation. And then lastly, our answer orchestrator is kind of that self-service layer. So you can either use Mantra, our own data agent, and that is what's Michael gonna show you in a couple of minutes, or seconds, I should say, rather. Or you can also expose these through MCP A to A APIs to wherever other tools you might need those kind of contextual data sets. So with that in mind, I'm going to hand it over to Michael, and he's going to take you through the product.
Thanks, Toby. Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Parazus. As Toby said, I'm a product engineer here at Promethium, and the team and I have been building out Mantra, which I am excited to show you guys in a second. So before we dive in here, I just want to set the scene. For the sake of this demo, let's imagine we are an analyst in an insurance company. We are maybe don't know the type of analysis that we want to start doing, and we just want to dive into this new data landscape that we've just been exposed to via Mantra. So we can start our process with discovery, as you would in a catalog or other tools, and say, what insurance data do I have access to? This is one of the major workflows that you're able to do with Mantra and our agentic framework, which is data discovery based on the underlying technical metadata that we crawl at the fabric layer based on all the context that links our day-to-day business language with that technical metadata and brings that all together into a response like this. So for your more technical folks, you will get a lightweight catalog. What tables do I have access to? What metadata is attached to them? What do they mean, etc. Obviously, you'll get the natural language explanation for the less technical folks, or the folks that don't want to go and verify or care about this underlying data. And for those less technical folks that just really want to get answers from this data, we could even pose our question in a different way. So I asked, what kind of data do I have access to? What types of questions can I ask about this data? And this is how I'm going to start our second workflow, which is going to be building out a data answer. I want to find what questions can we ask about this data, and then go ahead and build an answer from one of those questions. You can see it breaks it down into a few different buckets. We got claim level data, policy level, all the way up to operational and compliance. So I know now we have access to policy data, and I think a good starter question would be something around revenue, or just how are we actually generating money from these policies. So I'm going to go ahead and start a new conversation now, and we're going to dive into a second workflow, which is data answer building. The question that I'm going to start with is what are my top 5 profitable policies? So at the bottom here, you're going to see Mantra goes through and shows the user what types of tools am I using to discover context, to discover data, and eventually to build this query that's going to power my data answer. The two that I really want to hone in on here is, you'll see validating each time, and then this one that's actually on the screen right now, understanding business context. Every agent in our framework will have access to that business context tool, so that we're grounding each step of the process in that day-to-day business language and how that maps to the underlying schema. So we get as output this query, which we can run, and without moving data from this INS SQL, just get access to the top 5 with respect to this metric called combined ratio. So as I said, we're new to this data. I don't necessarily know what combined ratio is, so we can just continue this conversation and ask Mantra, how are they defining combined ratio? Why are they using that to measure profitability? And we get a full breakdown here. So There is some semi-complex calculation going on in the back end. But the important thing is that it has to be under one for something to be considered profitable, which we can see is baked in here. And now that we have that understanding, and in summary, a lower combined ratio is better, let's start to pull in maybe some identifying information as to who are our big users of these policies, what are the policy numbers, so that our downstream consumers get data that's more relevant to them than just some arbitrary policy ID. Can you include customer names? Will be my follow-up. So now with all of that context from our conversation so far, it's going to take that initial data answer and iterate on it. This is semi-positive feedback, so the answer is correct in what it's answering now, but we want some additional information is what we're trying to do here. Some of the additional tools that you'll see at the bottom are just iterating over different types of context. So business context is that language mapping, ontology, information model, however your organization defines that, whereas table relationships are joins that may come from your data platforms as we crawl them. So you can see this produces a more complex query. We're getting from two different sources here, INS SQL and SF Insurance, which we can blow out in this mini lineage diagram just to get an idea of the data flow here. So your less technical folks don't have to validate SQL. They can say, I know this should be coming from this data source, or even pass this diagram along to the data team and say, are these the correct data sources to answer this question? Now, let's go ahead and run this just to get the final output. And you can see we're getting either the name if it's an individual or the company name if it's an enterprise, alongside the policy number that some of my other analyst peers may be more familiar with than the database identifiers. If this is something that, apologies, I just had some technical problems. If this is something that you think that your peers would be interested in consuming, whether that's in their BI tool, in some program that they're running, as Toby said, we can consume via JDBC, ODBC, API, MCP, you name it. First thing you have to do is just go ahead and save this. So let's say December 4th demo, just for the sake of today. And once that's saved, it can be instantiated downstream and consumed in those manners. We can actually hop into that instantiation flow so that I can show you that consumption. Let's get signed in and find my December 4th demo data answer. So here you go. We have December 4th demo. Open it up. You can see that same query. If we go into this publish flow, we can either instantiate it as a view, so leave everything in Snowflake and SQL Server as we saw. We can instantiate it as a table, which is either materializing it into Promethium, back to SQL Server, back to Snowflake. All the connectors are bidirectional, so it's your choice. In this case, I'm going to keep it virtual so I don't have to move the data. And get rid of that identifier at the end, go ahead and publish. And once this publish flow is done, that means we have the view instantiated and we're able to consume it. Where I'm going to consume that from is DB Visualizer, just a very easy database client. Stop sharing quickly while I pull up that screen. And then we can dive into this preview sales, which is the demo environment that I just created that object in. Find the catalog, which is called Hive for our Promethium instantiated objects, that preview sales Trino schema, and it'll be under views. So December 4th demo, easy. You can imagine this being Power BI, Tableau, etc. And we get that live view of data from SQL Server and Snowflake in our client, being the top 5 profitable policies. So that's kind of the end-to-end lifecycle of discovering and building data answers from your data landscape that's connected to Promethium. Again, points of emphasis are we get full context of the day-to-day language that your business users are using through that 360-degree context hub, and then eventually can map that downstream so that your consumers continue to use those same semantics and data answers. Thanks for joining. We're going to stick around for some Q&A. So if there's anything that I didn't cover that you would love to see, please leave that in the Q&A. Or if you have any questions for me, happy to answer them. Thanks again.
Yes, thank you, Michael. Um, so yeah, as he said, if you have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A or in the chat, whatever is easier for you. Um, Also, if you're interested to learn more, see a personalized demo, or have any kind of, follow-up questions that you want to handle offline, feel free to reach out to either Michael or me, or you can simply scan the QR code here to schedule some time with either one of us or another member of our team.